What's up, everybody? Ryan Williams giving Vanderbilt some bulletin board material the offseason. More debate on the future of the college football playoff and how disappointing was SEC baseball this week. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com. All right, let's dive into it. We are going to talk about the college football playoff debate. 4-4 automatic bids or 5+11. What model do you favor? We'll talk about with our buddy Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On College Football, in just a minute. But first, we got to start with we always love some good offseason fodder, some bulletin board material. And how about Ryan Williams, the no longer 18-year-old or 17-year-old wide receiver at Alabama? He's grown up a little bit, but heading into his true sophomore season. And Ryan Williams making an appearance on a podcast with John Gruden, saying that, Vanderbilt, we're going to kill an ant with a sledgehammer. Last season, Alabama suffered, of course, one of the most shocking losses of the year. Maybe not even the year, the decade, the century, whatever you want to say, as Vanderbilt beat Alabama 40-35 last year in Nashville. It was Alabama's first loss to Vanderbilt in Nashville since 1969. And for the first time in more than 5 decades, Alabama will host a Vanderbilt team that's looking for a second consecutive win over the Tide. When asked about that game by John Gruden, Ryan Williams said, "We don't call them revenge games. We're going to kill an ant with a sledgehammer this year. Every game that we fell short last year, we definitely got the red eyes going into this year." So, again, it's most people would say, come on, Ryan Williams, it's Vanderbilt. Do you really need to, give them some kind of bulletin board material or whatever? Of course, Ryan Williams led Alabama receiving in that game last year, 3 passes for 83 yards and a touchdown. Crimson Tide will have a new quarterback this fall, Jalen Milroe, moving on to the NFL, and that competition ongoing between Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Keelan Russell. But look, the thing is, for Ryan Williams, Vanderbilt is they're bringing back some key pieces, including Diego Pavia, getting another year of eligibility. His stud tight end, Eli Stowers, got another year of eligibility as a grad transfer. He's coming back. And I was looking at something the other day. One of the draft scouts out there had Eli Stowers projected as the best tight end in this upcoming NFL draft. Like, they think he's going to have a monster year at Vanderbilt. And again, just something to keep an eye on there. Of course, they got Cedric Alexander back in the backfield, Junior Sherrill back at wide receiver. They brought in some pieces through the portal, Chance Fitzgerald, Trent Hudson at receiver. They've retooled that offensive line a little bit. Bryce Henderson sliding in at the right tackle spot. And then the defense, a lot of pieces back from last year, including middle linebacker Langston Patterson. So, look, Vanderbilt, I'm not saying they're going to beat Alabama. It's going to be very tough to win in Tuscaloosa. All I'm saying is, do you really want to be picking early June to be throwing out bulletin board material for any opponent? Just say, yeah, we're excited. We're excited to pay those guys back. They beat us last year. Instead, saying, we're going to kill an ant with a sledgehammer this year. Again, who's Alabama's quarterback? We don't know. It's up in the air. So, regardless, I will pass this along to you guys. The Manning Passing Academy we go to every year in the summer is coming up in a couple of weeks, and they've been announcing a lot of their quarterbacks that are going to be in attendance. There's a lot of big name quarterbacks from Cade Klubnik and so on and so forth, but in the SEC, there's a few names attending. I think I saw Taylon Green, Garrett Nussmeier, John Mateer, the new Oklahoma quarterback, Arch Manning, of course, it's his family's camp. But one name that was that popped up yesterday that is going to be attending is Ty Simpson. So typically, it's mostly starting quarterbacks that end up going to the Manning Passing Academy. So again, just saying, like, I get if Alabama started a game today, Ty Simpson will be the starter. He probably is going to earn that starting job by the start of the fall, but I do think Keelan Russell is going to play this year. Does he take over the starting job at some point? We'll see. But anyway, just a little writing on the wall there for Ty Simpson. All right, further debate on the college future of the college football playoff. 4 automatic bids for the SEC and the Big Ten, and then everybody else, or you do the 5+11 with 5 conference champs and 11 at-large bids. We discussed that debate with our buddy Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football. Here was that discussion. Run along here, Locked On SEC. We've been talking a lot about the college football playoff and the future of what's going to happen and what model we're going to adapt. And we've talked a lot about what the SEC and Greg Sankey have discussed and a lot of the coaches and all this. And I figured let's go outside of the SEC, get a outside perspective for our buddy Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On College Football. He joins us now. And Spencer, man, it was a huge topic of debate all last week at SEC meetings in Destin. The Big 12 brought it up, Brett Yormark. A lot of folks very divided on this. I'll just ask you, where do you stand on the automatic, 4 auto bids for Big 10 and SEC and everybody else gets the rest, or the 5+11 model?
Did you get one of the packets?
Request one.
Yeah, we'll see if they bring them to media days in Atlanta in July and see if we can grab one there. But, I've seen a lot of discussion about this stuff like you have, and, guys who I think are really smart and have good ideas for college football. Joel Klatt and Josh Pate both came out strongly against the 5+11 format, which is essentially an extension of what we just had. Like, if you think about it in these terms, which you haven't really for the 12-team playoff, we have 5+7, right? That's what we currently have right now. Is the SEC coming off a playoff year in which they are thrilled with what the committee did, leaving their 9-3 teams out and putting SMU and Indiana in? Last time I checked, that was a no, not happy, not good with that. And there were 3 SEC teams in the playoff this past year, and a model that has garnered a lot of support. I understand why, is the 4-4-2-2-1 +3, but to me that can raise the ceiling potentially on how many SEC teams get in, but I think it raises the floor, quite frankly. So I don't understand if your objective is let's not let the Big Ten or SEC just dominate everything, how the 5+11 is just going to allow them to completely take over. Go look at the playoff rankings for the last 5-6 years, Gordy, and what you see in there is if you had essentially a 1-16 seeded model, which is basically what 5+11 is, except you never know where the Group of 5 champion winds up getting ranked. But, a Boise State can be inside the top 15, or, Tulane a few years ago when they beat USC in the Cotton Bowl, I think was ranked like 15th or 16th or so. If you just went 1-16, there would have been years where the SEC would only get 3 teams in the playoff. And I just don't know why. I'm pro-committee. Is what it comes down to. I think most people are anti-committee, but I, was thinking about this as all these proposals are getting discussed, and I've watched the committee do what I think they should do over and over and over again. I would have left the 9-3 SEC teams out of the playoff. I would have left Florida State out of a 4-team playoff, probably not a 6, but I would have left them out of the 4-team playoff. I thought they got it right there. And I just think back to every other decision, and there's only been one year, Chris, where I felt like a team that could win the national championship didn't make the playoff. And it was the final year of the 4-team when Georgia lost the SEC title game to Alabama. Bama gets in with Texas, Washington, and Michigan. Georgia gets left out. That was the first time since they rolled out the 4-team playoff that I thought, wow, there's a championship caliber team that is not in the field here. Other than that, I never felt that way. Because what we forget every offseason is that college football, when you play out, 12, 13 games, you get so much information that at the end of the year, yeah, that team might have a good record. They're not winning at all. In the 12-team playoff, yeah, Indiana's a great, fun story last season. We all knew Indiana wasn't going to win the college football playoff. They weren't going to win a national championship. Should they have gotten in? I think so in the 12-team era, but I think we forget that every cycle. So I like the 5+11 idea because I think it drops the floor on what can happen. If the SEC teams beat up on each other and someone's concern is, well, so they're going to get so many teams in. Well, they could get 6 teams in easier in a 4-4, 2-2-1 +3 format than they could in the 5+11. That's just my stance on it.
Yeah, I was kind of on when this all first started. I was kind of on board with the 4 automatic bids because I was said, look, the SEC expanded added two monster brands in Texas and Oklahoma, 2 teams that in a normal year should be, borderline playoff teams. And the Big Ten went out and added Oregon and USC and UCLA and big brands. And I said those 2 conferences should get on the most bids, right? But then, the more I sat and thought about it, yes, I went back and looked at past years and. Yeah, it would be, while, like you said, it would guarantee 4 spots to the SEC in a 16-team playoff. There are many years where an 11+5 would have more SEC teams than possibly 5 or 6. My only issue with it in doing it this way, though, Spencer, is we are calling all conference champions equal, basically, by saying the 5 conference champs, you're all in. The team that wins the ACC.
No, I don't think so. I think you're saying you get in, but there's no guarantee because we've gone to straight seeding after 1 year of realizing, oh, this is a bad idea, which we all saw from the outside. We're like, wait, this isn't right. Boise State and ASU are getting top 4 seeds and Penn State's down. Like, what? How does that make sense? And of course, it worked out well for Penn State. But the recognition of the conference championship games, I think, is just a nod to make sure that those have the same level of urgency, and I'm okay with that. I want conference championship weekend to be exciting, to have something definitively on the line, like you had in the ACC title game this past year, where you knew SMU was probably in either way, but Clemson had to win in order to get in, and then they got that. I thought that was really good, and so I think that creates a good product. I don't think it treats them all the same because it doesn't guarantee any of the seeds, right? It guarantees you get in, but you could be the 15th or 16th seed. The SEC champ is not going to be, I don't think, ever put on the same footing unless it's an unbeaten Clemson or Florida State maybe, or Miami as the ACC champ.
More with Spencer McLaughlin in just a second, but want to remind you guys the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night is delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy for you to stay in the game before tip-off and in the live action. With player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, you have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You need to go check them out at FanDuel.com. All throughout the NBA playoffs, again, NBA final set, Pacers and Thunder. If you like certain players, if you like the upset, certainly have an opportunity to do that over at FanDuel.com. And what I like most is they've got college football lines up already for week 1. They got some under win totals. They got Heisman odds. I mean, it's all up there for you at FanDuel.com. So not just the NBA stuff, but also the stuff from college football that we are such big fans of. So check them out. You can head to FanDuel.com and check out their current playoff odds and player props. And if you're new to FanDuel, if you've never signed up with them before, perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. They're the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So you're saying just we'll keep it how it is, 1 through 16, how you're ranked at the end of the year. That's going to be that's how you would keep it in the seeding wise?
Yeah, and that's what they're going to for the 12-team playoff this year. And how crazy is this sport, by the way, that this will be next year will be our 3rd different playoff structure in 3 seasons. It'll be our 4th in 4 seasons, because last year you didn't have straight seeding. This year you do. Before last year, you had the 4-team playoff, and next year you'll be in the 16-team playoff. Like, that is a historically unprecedented sequence of events. But hey, I call it the craziest sport on planet Earth every day for a reason, because this stuff doesn't always make sense, but it is indeed great and wild. So I think straight seeding is the way to do it. I know a lot of people don't like the committee. I get it, but I just have never felt like they have screwed up so royally. And that's, again, because in the 4-team model, I would have left Florida State out. I think that was the right thing to do. In a 6-team model, no, but FSU wasn't winning that title.
Yeah, I mean, I do think them in the 12-team playoff going to straight seeding this year makes sense because, look, a lot of years the team that finishes second in the SEC, who loses the SEC championship game, is still a top 4 team. And you look at Texas last year, they took Georgia to overtime, they lose, and they fall out, and they have to go play a first-round game. And it was kind of silly because, and this is what I think for years moving forward is, a lot of times, Spencer, the team that loses the Big Ten title game or loses the SEC title game, it's still a top 4 team in the country. It's not their fault they had to go play an extra game. Whereas, the Big 12 champ, if the Big 12's down, whoever rolls through that conference goes, oh, well, look at us. We're the Big 12 champ. We deserve to go ahead of them. And it's like, well, no. Most years, the loser of the SEC and Big 10 title games is better than the conference champ of some of these other smaller conferences.
Yeah, and here's another thing to consider. I agree with you there. The other thing is that if you go to 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten, or especially in the SEC in recent years, because we have these super mega conferences that don't make any sense geographically. I mean, the SEC does, but you get what I'm saying. Like, because we have expanded the league so much and there's so many teams in there, there's scheduling imbalance all over the place. Missouri's schedule the last 2 years is not the same as Florida's. Texas's schedule last year is not the same as Oklahoma's, and it's the same thing this year, right? Until that cycles back through. So if you create automatic bids, you're going to base that on your conference record, right? That's the only thing to base it on. If you're saying, hey, this conference gets a set number of teams, you're going to base it on the conference record. Well, then you're going to have people upset, and justifiably so, that, hey, wait a minute. We went 9-3. But we played a way tougher schedule, but they're going to get into the playoff because they're, 10-2, or because, they went 8-4, but they only lost 2 games in conference and they finish at a certain spot. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah. It's not as feasible when everyone isn't playing everyone, and your schedules within a conference can vary so wildly. I mean, take a look at SMU's schedule last year. Take a look at their schedule this year. They're in the same conference. It's wildly different. And so to just place that emphasis on the conference record, suddenly you're going to look at, schedules and say, well, wait, I know this is a better team. And this is, again, why I'm more pro committee, because they can assess these sorts of things. I know that this team over here is better with this record against that schedule than this one over there. If you're going in the auto bid fast, that's just the way that I come down on it.
So real quick, if the college football playoff committee says we're going to go 5+11, if you're Greg Sankey in the SEC, do you move to 9 conference games, or do you say we'll stay at 8 if that's the model you're going to go with?
I think 5. I think the 5+11 makes it slightly more enticing. I think if you have a guarantee you're going to get 4 in, it's more likely they go to 9 games. I don't think there's zero upside to it, though, because you can't have people, hurl accusations at the SEC. Well, you have the late season cupcake in there, and of course, it's not an accusation; it's a reality. But if you take that away, I think it only strengthens the records of those teams that are on the bubble of getting into the playoff. Is that as big of an upside as we're automatically getting at least 4 teams in the playoff every year? No, it is not. Is there still an appeal? I hope so.
Yeah, it's just interesting to look at, I don't know, Ole Miss shot themselves in the foot last year losing to Florida, but let's just say they win
Kentucky. They lost in Kentucky.
Both those. But let's just say they had won the Kentucky game, but their 9th SEC game was at Bama, and they lose out. You know what I mean? So it's like that extra conference game could cost you.
It could, but I think the committee might also look at it and go, well, if you're playing another game, we'll consider your 9-3. But I like you see what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It would depend on how it's received by the committee. Yes. But if they look at it the way I would see it, which is, okay, if you add an extra conference game in there and then you're going 9-3, I am more inclined to put you into the playoff than under the current structure where you have 8 conference games and everybody else plays 9.
Well, right now the committee just goes, Michigan, you beat Bowling Green and Marshall and whoever, we'll put you in. So,
teams should not be in charge of scheduling, Chris. I will beat that drum until it changes. Teams should not set their own schedules. You don't have the Yankees out there saying, yeah, we're going to pass on playing the Red Sox this year. We're going to play the Orioles who stink. We're going to play the White Sox 4 times. Like, that's not how it works.
Well, he is Spencer McLaughlin. He is pro committee. I am pro putting Spencer on that committee. Let's get some of those old heads out of there.
It works for me.
Spencer, appreciate the time as always, man.
Yeah, anytime, Chris.
All right, more right after this. All right, running along here, Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Our thanks to Spencer McLaughlin for joining us to talk a little bit on the state of the college football playoff and all that. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk some SEC baseball. And look, it was a rough weekend for the SEC when it comes to baseball. We had a lot of teams ousted. First, let's say this. You had 64 teams in the SEC, had 13 teams in, 8 as regional hosts. Only 4 survived, 2 of which will play each other in the super regionals. So that means at most the SEC can get 3 teams into Omaha. But first off, I want to give congrats to the SEC teams that made it. We got Arkansas and Auburn, and then Tennessee and LSU. So let's pay a little homage to the teams that are going home. And look, first off, you know, we know Texas A&M, they were the disappointing started the season as preseason number 1. They missed the NCAA tournament. Mississippi State and Kentucky, it was kind of expected. I thought Kentucky actually put up a pretty good fight. They had leads on West Virginia twice, but blew them and blew their game late on Sunday. And Nick Minchione's team headed home. Mississippi State, obviously, they had fired Chris Lemonis. And, you know, they were playing with house money. They were rocking and rolling. And, you know, it was kind of whatever. If they could get out of that regional, fine, but they didn't. Now, the big news we did not discuss yet was we talked about the rumor a couple days ago, but Brian O'Connor is leaving Virginia for Mississippi State. Big time coach, a national championship winning coach. And reports are the bulk of his staff will follow him to Mississippi State. So that is a huge, huge hire there for Mississippi State. Florida, they were a little bit of a disappointment. I know they were the 2 seed, but I mean, they made national headlines because Kevin O'Connor got into it on regarding game time with some of the staff there at the regional they were at. I believe it was at the Coastal Carolina one. And then Oklahoma, look, they gave it their best against North Carolina. They beat them once and then lost the second one. So, but tip of the cap to Oklahoma. They played their butts off. Alabama, you know, their bats went absolutely quiet in their regional and again on the road, but that was disappointing. But how about the biggest disappointments? I mean, Georgia, they lose to Duke, who was a good opponent, but that's now back-to-back years Georgia's season ends in Athens. Last year they got to Super Regional, Game 3 against NC State, but at home, you're supposed to win at home. They lost that one. And then this year, they don't even get out of their regional in Athens. So Georgia, West Johnson, pretty disappointing in that realm. Vanderbilt, they lose to Wright State at home. That was ugly. Tim Corbin, you looked like one of the hottest teams in the country rolling through the SEC tournament. And, man, the pitching was not great. Offense couldn't find the timely hitting. And Vanderbilt, disappointing. Texas, I mean, we talked about it. Jim Schlossnagle raised the standard there at Texas this year. He reaches the, loses in the national championship game last year at Texas A&M. 48 hours later, he's switching allegiances over to Texas. And, yeah, Texas was picked to finish, I believe, 8th in the SEC this year, but they won the regular season. They raised the standard. Everybody had high expectations. And then they go on to lose to UT San Antonio in Austin in their home regional. Nasty. And then Ole Miss, that was just, look, they went to an elimination game on Monday, but losing to Murray State, absolutely brutal. Murray State had won 2 NCAA tournament games ever, coming in 1979, I believe. So Mike Bianco, that was disappointing. But the Supers are set now. It will be Auburn at home facing off against Coastal Carolina. I believe, what are they? The Chanticleers. And then you'll have LSU versus West Virginia in Baton Rouge. Jay Johnson and crew looking to keep that train rolling. Little Rock gave them all they could handle on Monday night, by the way. That was a fun game to watch. And we get the matchup of the weekend. I mean, it is Dave Van Horn versus Tennessee and Tony Vitello, the reigning national champs. Arkansas still looking for that first elusive national championship. So that is going to be a fun one. I mean, it is going to be absolutely electric there. I know Fayetteville is going to be rocking, and Tennessee hoping to go shock them and get back to Omaha. And Tony Vitello's made a lot of trips to Omaha lately. Dave Van Horn, he's had his fair share as well. So that is going to be the series of the weekend, in my opinion. But yeah, at best, the SEC can get 3 teams in. I mean, look, we're locked on SEC. You know, whatever your allegiance is, I'm rooting for Auburn and rooting for LSU. I want to see the conference get multiple teams in. I saw an Arkansas tweeter tweeted us at Locked On SEC. He said, "To hell with everybody. It's go Hogs. I don't want any other SEC teams there." I was like, all right, well, that's fair, but the conference pride thing is real now, man. I mean, it used to be just kind of a fun thing we kick around. These idiots that are Big 12 fans and all, like, they are coming for you. Like the Big 10 fans. I have so many of them talking trash in our YouTube videos and social media, DMs, emails, all that. So, look, SEC, put up or shut up time. It's time to start winning championships in football again. Softball, Texas is playing for a championship, by the way. Need to give them some props. They're going to be playing Texas Tech. So a chance at a national championship there for Texas in softball. But, yeah, this is going to be a fun one. So, anyway, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On SEC. Oh, I did want to pass one other thing along. Schools that made the Sweet 16 and a Super Regional, Duke and Arizona, and then 3 schools from the SEC, Tennessee, Auburn, and Arkansas. So Auburn, Arkansas, your sports teams are on the rise a little bit. Time for football to catch up, but pretty cool to see Sweet 16 in football and Super Regional in baseball. One other note, the University of Florida, their higher education system board of governors rejected the hiring of Santa Ono as University of Florida president. The vote was 10-6 no. So just something interesting to keep an eye on there with some turmoil there perhaps in the state of Florida and who will be the next Florida school president. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. You can check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith, he's got all the latest rumors on portal guys and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes of the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And Brian Smith will join us on, Thursday show. We're going to talk all things recruiting with him. We've had some big SEC commits this week. We didn't talk about them on the show today because we're going to talk about them with Brian Smith later in the week. So make sure you come back and check us out then. Thanks to Spencer McLaughlin for joining us. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.